If you've been in a relationship with an avoidant partner, you know the walls can feel impenetrable. For weeks or even months, they might seem distant, detached, or completely wrapped up in their own world. Then, almost suddenly, something changes. They start showing subtle warmth, a fleeting smile, a gentle tone, a casual touch that wasn't there before. They might share something personal, even just a small thought or feeling that hints at vulnerability. It feels like a crack in the wall, and your heart immediately races with hope, excitement, and if you're honest, a little fear. This isn't them giving in or suddenly changing in the way you've been hoping. What you're seeing is an avoidant doesn't open up lightly. They are carefully exploring whether you can handle the real, unguarded version of them. They're gauging if your patience, your steadiness, and your ability to stay calm in the face of their vulnerability will allow them to feel safe without retreating. This shift isn't about love suddenly blossoming overnight. It's about curiosity and the faintest glimmer of trust. Avoidants operate from a place of self-protection, often conditioned to believe that closeness equals danger or loss of control. So when they soften, even in the smallest way, it's monumental. Your instinct might be to overanalyze, to ask questions, or to push for more. Don't, right now. Your role is observation and presence. Notice the subtleties, the slightly longer glance, the unguarded laugh, the willingness to share a fleeting thought. These are the breadcrumbs of connection. They're inviting you to notice without overwhelming them. And here's the crucial part. How you respond in this moment sets the tone for everything that follows. Avoidants are hypersensitive to emotional pressure, especially when they're in a testing phase. If you pull away, dismiss their effort, or react with anxiety, the walls will snap back into place, sometimes thicker than before. But if you remain calm, grounded, and attentive without smothering, you're sending a signal that you can hold space for them. You're showing that your presence isn't a trap or a threat. In essence, the sudden softening is a subtle shift from defense to curiosity. It's their way of saying, without words, I'm willing to see if closeness is safe with you. It's a fragile, powerful moment, and it demands patience and awareness. Don't let fear of change make you pull away. This is the moment to stay, to witness, and to let them feel that opening without judgment. If you handle it well, it can mark the beginning of a deeper connection, one that moves past the surface games and into authentic emotional presence. You might notice a sudden increase in communication from your avoidant partner, and at first it can feel almost shocking. They might text more than usual, call unexpectedly, or engage in conversations they would normally avoid. That surge of attention can make your heart race, but it often comes with a flicker of doubt. Are they really changing, or is this temporary? The truth is, increased contact rarely means they've completely changed, or that the old patterns have vanished. What it usually signals is cautious exploration. They are testing the waters, seeing whether closeness is safe, measuring whether their vulnerability will be met with steadiness rather than panic. Even a simple, "How was your day?" or a message that seems small carries weight, because for an avoidant, every bit of engagement is a risk, a small step toward connection they normally avoid. Responding with calm presence rather than chasing, overanalyzing, or panicking is critical. When you remain steady, you show that engagement doesn't come with pressure or emotional instability. You allow them to experiment with closeness at a pace they can tolerate, creating a quiet safety that encourages them to continue opening up. Overreacting, however subtly, can make them retreat, reinforcing their fears that closeness is dangerous. This cautious engagement often sets the stage for subtle tests of validation. Avoidants rarely ask for reassurance directly. Instead, they tiptoe toward it, leaving small openings that can feel almost accidental. They might share a worry about work, a fleeting expression of affection, or a thought they would normally keep hidden. Even minor disclosures are profound, because they represent an experiment in trust. At these moments, it's easy to dismiss their attempts or misread them as manipulation. But that would be a mistake. These subtle bids for validation are their way of measuring whether you can accept them fully, without judgment or overreaction. When they do this, they are silently saying, "I'm willing to risk being seen. Will you see me without retreating?" Responding with calm acknowledgement, simple validation like, "I hear you" or "I appreciate you sharing that," signals that their effort is recognized without creating pressure. Over-investing emotionally or trying to fix their feelings can overwhelm them and trigger withdrawal. These moments of subtle validation are precious because they indicate that the walls are softening, that your partner is willing to test the boundaries of intimacy. Avoidants often fear that exposing vulnerability will lead to loss of control. So every small disclosure is a calculated risk. If met with patience and steadiness, these moments help build trust incrementally. They create a safe space where the avoidant partner can experiment with closeness. Learning that being seen does not have to equal danger, recognizing and responding to these moments appropriately lays the groundwork for a deeper connection. Avoidants notice the consistency of your responses more than the intensity. Remaining calm and supportive without overwhelming them with your own emotions communicates that closeness is possible without triggering their fears. The increase in communication and the subtle requests for validation work hand in hand. As they reach out more frequently, they are observing your reactions and gauging your steadiness. Each message or disclosure is like a probe, testing whether emotional intimacy is possible without them losing themselves. For someone accustomed to retreating when emotions run high, these small gestures are monumental. They are not guarantees of change or evidence that old patterns have vanished. They are experiments in trust. Your presence, calm and consistent, becomes the silent anchor that encourages them to continue experimenting with vulnerability. By resisting the urge to chase or overanalyze, you demonstrate that you can hold space for them, allowing them to explore connection at a pace that feels safe. When an avoidant partner begins seeking validation subtly, it can feel both encouraging and frustrating. They are often tentative, asking indirect questions or revealing small truths that hint at a need for reassurance. These moments are not about manipulation. They are the first signs that they are willing to risk being seen. Every small disclosure, every subtle bid for attention or acknowledgement is a test to see if closeness can exist without fear. How you respond matters profoundly. Validating them calmly, without judgment, without over-investing emotionally, allows them to feel safe and heard. Ignoring, dismissing, or overreacting to these moments can reinforce their instinct to retreat. This careful dance of engagement, validation, and observation is the heart of building connection with an avoidant partner. Their increased communication and tentative search for reassurance are intertwined signals that they are cautiously opening up. Your response is the defining factor in whether these openings expand into genuine intimacy or collapse under pressure. A calm, steady presence communicates that closeness is possible and safe. It allows your partner to test vulnerability without fear of emotional chaos. Even small gestures, like acknowledging a text or lightly responding to a shared thought, carry enormous weight. They show that you are attentive and supportive, yet grounded, creating a consistent and secure environment connection to grow. Avoidants rarely take these steps lightly. Every message, every disclosure, every moment of tentative vulnerability is a calculated risk for them. They are conditioned to protect themselves and maintain control, and yet in these subtle behaviors, they are experimenting with connection, seeing if trust is possible. Recognizing these signs, responding with patience and awareness, and maintaining calm presence can transform these small shifts into a steady path toward intimacy. The walls are beginning to soften, and the door to genuine emotional closeness is opening. Not because they have changed entirely, but because they are learning that you can be a safe place for them to explore vulnerability. By observing, acknowledging, and responding to these subtle shifts without panic or overreaction, you allow your avoidant partner to continue testing connections safely. Each text, call, or small disclosure becomes a building block for trust. Each subtle bid for validation is an invitation to witness, accept, and encourage vulnerability. In this way, the increase in communication and the quiet search for reassurance work together to create the conditions for authentic emotional intimacy. Steadiness, patience, and calm acknowledgement are the most powerful tools you have in navigating these moments. When handled correctly, these small but significant shifts can mark the beginning of a deeper, more resilient connection that honors both their cautious nature and your presence as a steady anchor. At some point, you may notice a subtle, almost imperceptible change in the way your avoidant partner interacts with you. It often begins in ways so small you might almost dismiss them, yet these shifts carry more meaning than words can capture. One of the clearest signs is mirroring, when they start to reflect your routines, your humor, your gestures, or even your moods. You might notice them laughing in the same way you do at a shared joke, or adopting a habit that you've mentioned in passing, or perhaps they begin to subtly match your energy, your rhythm, or your pacing in conversations. At first, it can feel coincidental, almost as if you're imagining it. But the truth is that mirroring is a secret signal. It's their way of paying attention, their way of saying without words, "I see you and I care." It's a quiet, careful invitation to notice their presence and the effort they're making. For avoidance, this kind of subtle alignment is a sign of connection. They rarely mimic or reflect behaviors without intention, because doing so requires observation, focus, and a willingness to engage beyond surface-level interaction. What you are seeing is not just imitation, it's an opening, a cautious bridge that shows they are interested in deepening connection, while still protecting their autonomy. Mirroring can be delicate, because avoidants are hyper-aware of emotional pressure. If you react to these small gestures with overt enthusiasm or try to force closeness, the walls may retreat as quickly as they appeared. Instead, acknowledging subtly, without dramatizing it, communicates that you notice without threatening their safety. A simple smile, a small nod, or a gentle acknowledgement of their humor is enough to reinforce that connection. By doing this, you are silently affirming that their effort to engage is seen and appreciated, but that you are not demanding more than they are willing to give. This balance between recognition and restraint is what strengthens connection with an avoidant partner, allowing them to explore closeness while maintaining their sense of control. It is a dance of patience and awareness, where every small gesture can signal safety, trust, and an unspoken bond forming beneath the surface. As they mirror you, you might begin to notice other subtle tests emerging. Avoidants often follow mirroring with boundary testing. They push limits, not to hurt or manipulate, but to see whether your responses are consistent, calm, and steady. This is their way of measuring whether your love, attention, and presence are reliable, whether you can hold space without overreacting, panicking, or withdrawing. They are not leaving or checking out. They are performing an internal litmus test. For them, stability is attractive, while unpredictability triggers retreat. You may notice them pushing small buttons, challenging minor agreements, or introducing minor conflicts just to gauge your reaction. It can feel unnerving, but it's actually an essential step in the process of deepening connection. Avoidants need to know that closeness won't come at the cost of feeling trapped, smothered, or emotionally endangered. Your response to boundary testing is pivotal. Standing firm without rigidity, maintaining calm without coldness, and showing that you can hold your ground without aggression communicates a sense of security that avoids deeply respect. Overreacting, chasing, or becoming emotionally entangled in their tests signals that closeness is unsafe, triggering retreat. On the other hand, steady, unshakable boundaries demonstrate that you are a stable presence, someone they can trust even when they challenge the rules or the limits of the relationship. They are watching carefully, analyzing whether they can rely on you to remain consistent, supportive, and non-reactive, and your behavior at these moments often determines whether they will continue opening up or retract into self-protection. Mirroring and boundary testing often occur together, creating a subtle but powerful dynamic. As they reflect your actions and routines, they simultaneously test your ability to respond calmly, under pressure. Each mirrored gesture is an invitation to engage, and each test of boundaries is an opportunity to reinforce your stability. Avoidants are highly sensitive to inconsistency, and they notice how you handle small provocations or subtle challenges. Responding with patience and measured awareness builds trust, while reactive behavior reinforces the very walls they are beginning to dismantle. In this sense, the dance of mirroring and boundary testing is not adversarial. It is the mechanism by which an avoidant partner explores the possibility of closeness while maintaining control over their own emotional safety. It's important to recognize the courage behind these behaviors. For someone who has spent years prioritizing self-protection over intimacy, even small gestures of mirroring or testing are enormous leaps. They are experimenting with vulnerability in ways that feel safe to them, and they are watching for evidence that their trust is warranted. Acknowledging these efforts subtly, without exaggeration, and responding with calm firmness communicates that you are reliable, present, and capable of maintaining connection without triggering withdrawal. By doing so, you allow the relationship to progress naturally, encouraging incremental closeness while respecting their need for space and control. Through this combination of careful observation, subtle acknowledgement, and steady responses to challenges, you create an environment in which an avoidant partner can safely explore deeper levels of intimacy. Mirroring and testing are not signs of instability. They are indicators that your partner is engaging with you, taking calculated risks, and exploring the possibility of emotional connection. By recognizing these moments, responding appropriately, and maintaining consistency, you support a shift from guardedness to cautious openness. Over time, these small but significant patterns lay the foundation for a relationship that balances autonomy with intimacy, fear with trust, and independence with connection. The quiet signals, the mirrored gestures, and the subtle tests are not obstacles. They are invitations. How you respond shapes whether those invitations are met with retreat or with the growth of real, sustainable closeness. There comes a point in the avoidant dynamic when something shifts subtly but unmistakably, and it often begins with moments of vulnerable honesty. After weeks, months, or sometimes years of guardedness, your partner allows a glimpse of emotion to slip through the barest hint of fear, affection, or even regret. It might come as a quiet confession, a hesitant apology, or a fleeting expression of concern that seems out of character. For someone not accustomed to revealing their inner world, these moments are rare and precious, and they tell you far more than 1,000 words could. They are not signs of instability or weakness. On the contrary, they indicate that the wall is cracking in a controlled, calculated way. The message behind these small exposures is clear. They are willing to risk being seen, to show that their emotional armor is not invincible, and to test whether closeness can exist without danger. For those who have spent their lives prioritizing self-preservation over connection, letting anyone witness even a fraction of their inner world requires courage of the highest order. Your task in these moments is to listen, not to fix. Resist the urge to overanalyze, interpret, or rescue. Simply witness their courage, acknowledge it silently, and provide a steady presence that communicates safety without judgment or expectation. Avoidants are particularly sensitive to the way their vulnerability is received, and how you respond can determine whether these rare openings expand into deeper intimacy or prompt retreat. If met with judgment, anxiety, or excessive emotional display, they will often retract, perceiving closeness as a threat rather than a bridge. But if met with calm, attentive acknowledgement, these small acts of honesty serve as building blocks for trust. They show that connection can exist without fear, that you can hold their vulnerabilities without being consumed by them, and that intimacy does not have to be synonymous with risk or loss of control. Over time, these small exposures accumulate, creating a pattern that allows them to feel seen, heard, and accepted on their own terms. For you, it is an exercise in restraint and awareness, to honor the bravery of their small steps without overwhelming them with your own desires or fears. Of course, moments of vulnerability are rarely linear or permanent. Shortly after opening even slightly, Many avoidants retreat, pulling back into familiar patterns of distance. This subtle withdrawal is easy to misread as rejection or disinterest, but it is not. Avoidants often pull back when emotions become too real, when closeness threatens the very mechanisms that have kept them safe. They are not leaving because they no longer care. They are recalibrating, testing whether your presence is steady enough to endure the intensity of authentic connection. Your role during these retreats is critical. Chasing, pressuring, or reacting with panic will only reinforce the behaviors that drove the withdrawal in the first place. Instead, remaining emotionally consistent, calm, and grounded communicates a form of support far more potent than words ever could. It demonstrates that you are a stable presence, capable of holding space for both their vulnerabilities and their defenses without collapsing under the weight of either. Emotional consistency now becomes the strongest language you can speak, louder than any argument, apology, or pleading could ever convey. As these cycles of brief honesty and careful withdrawal continue, you begin to notice a profound shift. The dynamic moves from one dominated by pursuit and evasion to one in which they are responsive to your presence, not merely your pursuit. This is the subtle but unmistakable power shift moment. Previously, you may have felt that connection depended on your efforts, that closeness required constant attention, chasing, or managing their emotions. Now, however, you see that they are beginning to invest voluntarily, choosing engagement without fear dictating every action. They are observing, responding, and adjusting, not because they are forced, but because they are beginning to trust that connection is safe, rewarding, and sustainable. This moment is rare, and many couples never experience it. Those who do often find that it marks the beginning of a different relationship rhythm, one in which power is shared, emotional walls soften, and intimacy is possible without compromise of self. The key to navigating this power shift is calm, confident, and boundaries, respecting energy. You no longer need to chase, cajole, or manipulate responses. Your role is to maintain presence, demonstrate consistency, and continue respecting both your needs and theirs. Avoidants are highly attuned to energy, tone, and stability. They notice when attention is given without desperation, when acknowledgement is steady rather than reactive, and when boundaries are enforced without aggression. This combination signals that you are a secure anchor, someone whose value does not fluctuate with every interaction, and whose presence is not contingent on their compliance. It communicates that closeness is safe, attainable, and sustainable, and it provides the framework within which an avoidant partner can gradually explore authentic engagement. During this phase, small signals take on extraordinary meaning. A thoughtful response, a gentle acknowledgement of a shared experience, or a quiet validation of feelings can carry more weight than grand gestures. Avoidants are hyper-aware of inconsistency, and their trust grows not through declarations or promises, but through repeated, reliable patterns of behavior. Every small act of calm, grounded presence reinforces the idea that vulnerability will not be met with instability, and that emotional intimacy can exist without fear. By maintaining this approach, you provide a foundation for connection that is both resilient and sustainable, gradually shifting the dynamic from avoidance and testing to engagement and voluntary investment. This is also the stage where patience becomes crucial. The avoidant partner may not consistently respond or may still oscillate between openness and retreat. These fluctuations are not signs of regression. They are part of the process of recalibrating trust. Your ability to remain steady in the face of these shifts communicates an unspoken truth. Your presence is reliable, your boundaries are firm, and your emotional engagement is measured. Over time, this steady approach encourages the avoidant partner to continue taking calculated risks in sharing themselves, testing the waters of intimacy without fear of being consumed or overwhelmed. They begin to internalize that closeness does not have to mean loss of autonomy, and that vulnerability is not inherently dangerous when met with reliability and respect. In essence, the combination of moments of vulnerable honesty, subtle withdrawal, and the eventual power shift is a dance of patience, observation, and presence. Each glimpse of emotion is a gift. Each retreat is an invitation to demonstrate calm consistency, and each response from you shapes whether trust deepens or walls are reinforced. Avoidants are not easily swayed by words alone. They are sensitive to tone, energy, and repeated patterns. The power shift moment occurs when they recognize that your engagement is steady, predictable, and respectful, and that your value does not fluctuate with their compliance. This realization allows them to invest voluntarily, creating a space where emotional connection can flourish on both sides. By witnessing these moments without judgment, responding with measured presence, and maintaining consistent boundaries, you support a profound transformation in the relationship dynamic. The walls that once defined the avoidant partner's interactions begin to soften, not because of pressure or manipulation, but because trust has been established through reliability, calm energy, and respect for autonomy. Vulnerability becomes safer, withdrawal becomes less threatening, and engagement becomes more consistent. What once felt like an uphill battle of pursuit and evasion gradually transforms into a partnership in which both presence and participation are freely chosen, and the relationship moves toward authentic, resilient intimacy. Ultimately, these stages, honest glimpses of emotion, careful retreats, and the eventual power shift, reveal the subtle mechanics of connection with an avoidant partner. Each moment is an opportunity to demonstrate steadiness, patience, and respect for both their needs and your own. By recognizing the courage in their vulnerability, allowing space during withdrawal, and maintaining calm, confident energy, you create the conditions for lasting engagement. The avoidant partner begins to invest, not out of fear or obligation, but because they perceive safety, reliability, and value in the connection. This turning point is transformative, marking a shift from dynamic dependence on pursuit to mutual voluntary investment, and laying the foundation for a relationship that is both emotionally deep and sustainably balanced. Remember, your value has never been defined by their shifts, their distance, or the walls they've built. You didn't become less worthy when they pulled away, and you didn't suddenly become more or less important when they started opening up. What changes everything is not who they are, but how you choose to show up. Your patience, your consistency, and your calm, grounded presence are the forces that allow them to step into connection without fear. This is your power to remain steady, to honor your boundaries, and to provide a safe space where vulnerability can flourish. Walk away now, and the opportunity vanishes. The door closes, perhaps forever. But if you stay, if you continue to show up with confidence, respect, and emotional balance, you witness something extraordinary. The avoidant heart slowly, intentionally, and authentically opening in ways you may never have imagined. You don't need to chase, fix, or force change. Your presence alone, steady and unwavering, is enough to transform distance into connection, fear into trust, and guardedness into genuine intimacy. This is the ultimate truth. You cannot change them, but you can be the anchor that allows them to choose closeness on their own, and that is where true connection begins.